Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Anu Advani is a dedicated board member of Hospitality Homes, known for her compassionate commitment to providing support and accommodation to individuals and families in need. Her journey with the organization began as a host, driven by a desire to instill the value of empathy in her teenage sons. First, this firsthand experience of welcoming guests into her home, coupled with witnessing the profound impact of the Hospitality Homes team on those traveling for medical treatment, propelled her to take a more active role. As a board member, Anu brings invaluable insight and a personal understanding of the importance of offering a home away from home to those facing medical challenges in unfamiliar cities. Hospitality Home celebrates Anu Advani's contributions and her ongoing dedication to their mission. Beautiful, Anu. It's so nice to meet you. And I am so glad you're on my show. And I did mention you on my previous podcast when I was talking with Gabi. And she has her podcast called Alpala Caso or something like that. And she had you, and I got so inspired by what you do. And
Thank you.
I'm going to share a little story first about why I'm so passionate about what you do and how I'm so grateful for those who are hosting homes for people who are in need. So welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so back in 2015, I was supposed to be induced for my delivery.
Mhm.
And, I had gestational diabetes, and that's why they wanted to go ahead and make sure the baby was going to come out a little bit early. So what they did is they induced me by putting some hormone inside me, and then what I thought was my water breaking was actually blood. The nurse came and looked. I'm
Mm.
like, "Oh, excited, my water broke." And she looked up like underneath that blanket, and she had this horrific face on her, and she's just like, "Whoa, that's not blood. That's not water, that's blood." And so I was hemorrhaging. I had a reaction to that. And so baby was in distress. I was hemorrhaging. The cesarean section room, which was the only room there at the
Mm.
hospital, was taken. So it was a matter of life and death for both of us. And
Right.
so finally, when the room was cleared, we went ahead inside there. They got me on the gurney, knocked me completely out, and then they got my baby. I remember waking up and then asking, is my son okay? And they
Mhm.
were working on it, and I was like terrified, but yet I was still kind of drugged from the anesthesia. And so I was a little loopy, but they had to revive him because he actually had hypoxia, no oxygen to the brain, and he was pale white, as white as a sheet. And they had to revive him, transfer him to the children's hospital over in Oakland, which was about maybe 20 minutes away from where I delivered him. And so after 3 days after I left postpartum, I went straight there. What was beautiful is that they provided a family house and where I can stay. And I remind you, I still had surgery, so I had help. And I was able to go and back and forth to see him and visit him whenever I wanted to. And so and it was all for free. They accepted donations and everything. And so I was so grateful because I was so close to my child. And that's why I wanted to bring you on my show. Because I'm like, I love what you do. And I'm just like so grateful that you're here. So enough about me. Anu, if you can just go ahead and share a little bit about your background and what initially inspired you to pursue your current path.
Okay, so I'm a third generation do-gooder. My grandfather and my father and my mom help people. When the British left India, India got divided into three different countries, and my grandfather came over as a refugee immigrant with nothing. My my grandparents on my mom's side also left everything behind and came here with nothing, and they had to build up from scratch. And so, when they did build up, my dad's dad set up a trust so he could, every year he would marry off 500 women so that they didn't have to pay dowry. He set up a building for widows to be housed in, and he did a lot of good work. Now, my parents, before I could have my birthday party, I went to the home for the blind or somewhere else, and I fed the kids over there, and then I had my birthday party with my kids. And, My mom ran a restaurant, and when the food was left over, her chauffeur would sit at a street corner with all the food, and people would come and get the food from him so that they wouldn't be starving. So that's kind of the atmosphere I grew up in. So I grew up in India, where there's a lot of poor people and there's a chain of giving, you know? So you try to help whoever you can whenever you can. At least that's how my family does it. And y- I've seen how little changes, acts of kindness make a huge difference in people's lives for generations to come. And so, with that background, I got married, I came to America. 2008, I got divorced. So, I had a big house, 5 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and it went from having 6 people in it to having 3 people in it. I had an extra couple of bedrooms. And my son, when he was in third grade, there was this other boy, Paul Levine, who is the most empathetic boy I have ever come across in my life. And I asked his mom, what is it that, how come this kid is so nice? And she said, well, maybe it's because he shares his bathroom with strangers. And I'm like, huh? And she's like, well, we're part of this program. It's called Hospitality Homes. So we have an extra bedroom, and strangers from all over come and stay with us, and they do medical treatment. And then, the boys share the bathroom with them. So they get to meet them, know their stories. And, they'll be in the kitchen. We might be having breakfast together. I'm like, oh, that's huge. Strangers in your house. How's that worked out? She's like, never had a problem. I've been doing this for 5 years at that point, never had a problem. So when she told me about this, I didn't have any extra rooms or anything. But then I got divorced. And now I had a bunch of extra rooms. And I have 2 sons who were at that point, 14 and 17. And, they were lucky to have everything in life. And I'm like, how do I teach these kids like I was taught? And I'm like, I called up Mimi. I'm like, Mimi, is it still safe to host? And she's like, yeah, of course it is. And then I told my dad in India that I was going to be hosting strangers in my home. And he goes, no, you can't do that. No, it's not safe. Don't do that. I'm like, I'm just informing you guys. I'm not asking for permission. I'm going to be doing this because I want to do it. And then I called up the organization. And so what happens is someone from the organization comes over, they interview you, they take photos of the bedroom, and all you need to sign up to be a host for this organization is a bed and access to a bathroom. You don't have to provide anything else. Boston is the mecca for medical care. People come from all over. Boston also has hotels that go at an 85% occupancy rate at a price of $250 to $450 a night. And health insurance will cover 80% of your medical stuff, but they will not cover transportation, food, or housing. So it adds up very quickly. Hospitality Homes, I call it a little David organization, is this tiny little nonprofit, which when I signed up, their operating budget was $300,000 a year. They had 4 staff members, and 95 cents of every dollar went towards the program. We were a group of 120 hosts, and we would host strangers in our home. So I started doing this, and it went very well. I had people from Mexico, from the Bahamas, from all parts of America, the nicest people you can imagine. I mean, there was a woman that stayed with me, and she's like, your toilet wasn't working. So I went down to the hardware store and I replaced this. And I'm like, you know how to do that? Why didn't you just tell me? I'd call the plumber. She's like, no, you're looking after me. I'll look after you. I'm like, thank you. And then there was the Chinese family. The guy only spoke Mandarin, but he saw me mowing the lawn outside and he comes out in his flip-flops and he just gestures to me and he's like, I'll do this. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And so Hospitality Homes is a nonprofit in Boston. When patients and their families come from 50 miles away to Boston for medical treatment, we provide them with housing. And since the pandemic, besides host homes, we also have donated homes and subsidized Airbnbs and hotels that we provide. We have an amazing executive director who is also a host herself, Debbie Pepper. So she truly understands our guests. And she signed on in January of 2019, and then everything shut down. And we didn't know what was happening next. The Ronald McDonald House, which again, you can only stay in if your child has cancer, shut down. The Hope Lodge shut down. The only place that stayed open throughout the pandemic and didn't turn anyone away was Hospitality Homes. We went from 120 hosts to 5 hosts. But the board members worked with the office staff. We released $120,000 and I shouldn't say we, Debbie. Debbie signed contracts with hotels and Airbnb people to get subsidized housing so that every guest who came, now the guests also went down, right? Because of COVID, um, people who absolutely had life-threatening issues and needed to have it worked on traveled. And they actually had to show up 2 weeks before to quarantine and then go in and then stay 2 weeks after. So the stays became longer, but the number of days used was longer, but the number of people went down. But Debbie kept the organization going. And now I think this is year 3 or year 4 for her. The operating budget has doubled. The office staff has doubled. The number of people that are coming and staying with us has more than doubled. And it's doing really well. And while I had that big house and I was hosting, I knew that at some point the kids would go off to college and I wouldn't have that big house anymore. So I started hosting in, I think, around 2010. And I sold the house 7 years ago. And 6 months after I moved into a condo, I was like, I have to host. I cannot do this. I cannot stop cold. And I missed it. I missed the people who came and the kids I met. Like, one of the highlights for me during the pandemic was just like you. There was a family who came with a baby in the NICU, and then they brought the baby home. And, I got my mask on, I let them into the house, I wave hi at them, I'm keeping my distance. And then the parents asked me, would you like to hold Jack? And I'm like, Cam, yes, I would love to hold Jack. Would that be okay with you? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I got to hold little baby Jack, who's adorable. The family's from Hawaii and they still need to come. They give me a call whenever they come. And, I'm hoping to see Jack growing up. And one of my other favorite kids is Little Cruz. Little Cruz comes from Arkansas. And there they told him, we can't do anything. And you know this for a fact, when you have a kid, you don't give up on that kid. You figure out what it takes to fix it. So that was a rough story because the parents came, they had everything set up. Little Cruz was going to get um, medevaced over to the hospital. And so the parents are here. I've got them settled in. and then a storm comes, and the kid is cannot fly out. His plane is canceled. So they're here, the kid's there. So the storm passes, and the mom's melting down. She hasn't slept in days because the kid's there and she's here. And so then the storm passes. Then it's like, now there's no bed at Children's Hospital. So the kid's still there and they're here. And I'm like, I see them and I talk to them, and they're telling me, and they're young parents under the age of 30. And they're just like out of their minds with worry and like, what should they do next? And I'm like, did you talk to the doctor at Children's Hospital? Because, I'm older, been through a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, sometimes when a doctor talks to a doctor, they can make things happen. So they talked to the doctor, who talked to the other doctor. Next thing, the kid's been flown over, and the kid is here. And little Cruz is now a year and a half, maybe even 2 years old. I'm Facebook friends with the parents, and I see the photos and I see the kid growing up, and it's just amazing, you know? And it's like, it's such an easy thing for you to do. Like, if you have an extra bed, why not? Right?
Right.
And you impact so many people. I've hosted more than 250 families for, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 nights, and kind of lost track. So,
Wow. That's
um,
amazing though, Anu. I was just thinking about it. I'm like, so much joy it must bring inside the home,
mhm.
by you just offering your home and then your love, really, what it is. And I'm
Uh,
sure they're so grateful because and this is hard times. Like I going but thinking back about mine, like I was going through some delicate times. And
mhm.
yeah, I was going to ask you about like those experiences you had. So thank you for sharing about, Cruz and then the little baby that was from NICU. But as someone who has firsthand experience opening your home to guests, can you actually describe the impact this has had on your family, especially in teaching your teenage sons the value of empathy?
So my younger son is featured on a hospitality homes brochure
Oh,
because he says, and I'm kind of almost quoting his words, um, hosting strangers in my home has made me the man I am today.
oh,
And it
wow.
is the staff of hospitality homes that makes the connections that make it all possible.
Wow. I almost it's like
So
a proud mom moment. You're just like, wow.
I got it right, didn't I?
That is amazing. Now, in your view, what is the most significant way hospitality homes impact the lives of guests traveling to like unfamiliar cities or for medical treatment?
So, you know, Debbie's always telling us focus on the main goal, which is providing the housing. But so I will also say that, when I figured that I was going to stop hosting, I requested if I could be on the board so I could still be connected. So I've been a board member for 7 years now. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was part of the group that released the money for the housing during the pandemic. And so the other thing that we do, because at the end of the day, we're involved with this organization because we're empathetic individuals. So we also, when I had this one couple come and stay with me, and it was like they were taking the train because Ubers and Lyfts were expensive.
Mhm.
So I did a fundraiser and raised some money so we could get Uber gift certificates to give to our guests. And so we also provide gift certificates for, like, coffee and other stuff. Because it's not much, but you're in the hospital, you're already maxed out between the medical expenses and the transportation, the food, and then you get this card and you can go and get a cup of coffee at the hotel, and it's, you know, kind of like free.
Yeah, everything counts. Everything counts. Doesn't matter how small, it all counts. And it does help. As
Yeah.
I work at the Four Seasons Hotel, I've been there 17 years and I work in the spa department though. And we're all about hospitality and giving, giving, giving. But this is a completely something different. It was like this is your home. This is your home. And I was going to ask you, as a board member, what initiatives or
Right.
projects are you most passionate about implementing within hospitality homes?
Ah, we've been trying to get a corporate sponsor for like crazy. I mean, look at what we do.
Yeah.
It's international, but we're Boston based because you have to have three things to make something like this successful. Okay. So you have to have cutting edge medical treatment. Okay. Which Boston has and New York has. Okay. Then you have to have hotels that are expensive and pretty occupied, which Boston has and New York has. But then it's the third thing. You have to have an extra bed and access to a bathroom in a home. New York does not have that.
Mm.
And so you need those three things, and it works in Boston. So we actually tried to look into going into other places and starting this. And it really works in Boston, but would not work so well in other places. There was a family that came and stayed with us, and they started one in another state. I forget which states it is in, but the house is called the Lily Pad because the daughter's name is Lily.
That's so sweet.
So
I like
they,
that name.
yeah, so they put a house near a hospital, and so you can stay there.
Very nice. Now, do you come across any other challenges that you perhaps have encountered in your role, especially being a board member? And how have you worked to overcome them to support the mission of the hospitality homes?
So, so like I said, it's a little organization, and there'll be lots of people who don't know about it. And as my best friend says, the second sentence out of Anu's mouth is hospitality homes. And she goes on. And I have business cards that I asked the organization to make for me. And so it has the name of the nonprofit and it has the information to get in touch with them. And on the back, I used to have my statistics, being a host and how many nights I'd hosted and everything. And I would hand it out to people. Like I'd be at a bar and hand it to the bartender because people talk to bartenders. And I'd go to a restaurant and I'd hand it out. And I'd go to a store and hand it out. I mean, I had the HVAC guy come to my house and put in a split unit, and I handed him a card. And then he turns to me and he says, I also have an ice company. So if you're ever having an event and you need free ice, I'll give it to you.
Wow,
And the restaurant would give me a gift certificate. And they're like, if you're having a fundraiser, use our gift certificate. So when I talk about this, people who might need the housing and are not aware of it, they find out about it. I get donations. And sometimes I come across someone who's like, oh, that's an interesting thing. I live near a hospital. Can I do this too? So, as I told you earlier, I'm like a crazy social anxiety introvert, but for the greater good, I deal with it and I put myself out there because this organization is so amazing. Everyone should know about it and everyone should do whatever they can to help.
absolutely. Now, for our listeners who are interested in, either hosting or want to get into contact with you, what is the best way?
So, hosp.org, HOSP.org is the Hospitality Homes website. You can go there, and you can donate. You can fill out an application to be a guest. You can fill out an application to be a host. They're also on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Um, and pretty
Um,
much if you Google Anu Advani Brookline, you'll see me talking about hospitality homes multiple times. I've hosted events at my home, you know. get-togethers for hosts, for people who want to learn about the organization, whatever. Whatever I can do, I will do it.
That's awesome. Now, quick question. What does your dad say now? Because he was all kind of skeptical at the beginning. What does
You
he say
know,
now?
that is a very interesting question, and you will not believe his answer. Okay. So I hosted for 10 years, and then I'm getting ready to sell the house. Okay. So I'm like, Dad, I'm selling my house now. He's like, Anu, you got to put in the contract that whoever buys your house has to continue hosting for hospitality homes. And I'm like, Pa, if I put that in the contract, no one's going to buy my house.
That is hilarious. Oh,
To turn around.
yeah,
Yeah.
total. And that is hilarious. And oh my goodness.
Mhm.
And just what advice would you actually give to someone who is just starting their journey in something similar to this type of field or this type of endeavor?
So, what I find is if you do a kindness, you feel better. So, I went into this when my world was falling apart. And doing this has made me a stronger, smarter, better person. So, this is a huge ask of anyone to give a bed in their house. But I say, go out. I meet strangers on the street. I always look them in the eye. I say, good morning. Hello. How are you doing? You can compliment a woman on her haircut. You can, you know, little kindnesses, they add up. And if everyone did one kind thing, it's like ripples in a pond, right? You throw a stone in, and then if there's a ripple, and then if that one throws a stone in, the world would be a kinder, gentler place, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it will be. And that's what it was a big part of my recovery from alcoholism is I was starting to serve. And when I started to serve, I wasn't thinking about drinking anymore. I just found so much joy in helping people because we would go out to the streets and serve the homeless or, just setting up for events, doing multiple things, and it just brought so much joy. And I don't even want like praise, like, oh, Gina, good job, you're doing that. I didn't want that praise. All I wanted was to say, hey, I made an impact in someone's life. I made somebody else smile. And that way it is like that ripple effect because once they feel that, then they will pass it on to somebody else. And then that
Mhm.
someone else will pass it to somebody else. And it's like exactly what she said. It's just like, then the whole
Right.
world will just be a happier place.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Is there any last words or thoughts you would like to share?
Um, Thank you for having me on the show. And I hope a lot of people see this and are able to get in touch with hospitality homes, um, and do something. If you can't do something here, do something somewhere else because doing something is what matters.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anu. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. Thank you.